Hey everybody, my name is Brandon. Most of you probably don't know who I am, but I wanted to come on here and talk about my story in hopes that one day, maybe every day, it could help somebody with the struggles that they're going through. I do have a little thing typed up here. A little nervous about doing this, so I'm trying to keep myself on track with what I want to talk about. Maybe not the best way, but we'll see how it goes. This is my first video that I've ever made, staring at myself. It's kind of a little awkward, not gonna lie, but I'm here to talk about anxiety and depression, something that I have struggled with for a very long time. The devil wants you to believe that you're the only one feeling these things. He wants you to be isolated from everybody and think that nobody else will ever understand. Nobody else will ever know what you're going through or understand the pain that you're going through. And that's a lie. The devil will do anything he can to keep you isolated, thinking that there's no salvation from this. That was me for a very long time, but by the grace of God, I was saved from a life of suffering. And I understand religion might not be for everybody, and I'm here to tell you, try to stick around even if you are not someone who believes 100%. Before 2 months ago, I was agnostic. I did not believe in God. But I would tell you that it did change my life, and I do want to share that. But I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to tell you what you should believe or what you shouldn't believe or you're wrong for not believing or any of that nonsense. I'm just here to tell my story and my experience because that is what I have. It's what I went through, what I've experienced, and whether you believe or not, it's still my story. So I'm not going to preach to you. I'm just going to share my story and talk about how faith has changed things. But also, I've only been in faith for 2 months. So it's been a lot of years of experience that was without God as a focal point of my life. So if religion isn't for you, try to stick around. You might still get something out of this. I'm going to acknowledge right now that there's going to be some jump cuts because, again, this is my first video. The first time I've ever tried to do something like this at all. So I'm going to make some mistakes. I got my little script here and I'm going to be honest. I've gone off the rails pretty quickly already. So we're just going to keep going, see where it goes. Almost to the point where I was going to throw the script out the window, but we'll see where we go. First thing that I want to acknowledge is that it's okay to need extra help. It's okay to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Some people will try to make you feel like it makes you less of a person in a way, but they're wrong. Everyone needs help. Finding good help is hard, especially if you're talking about going to the doctors. I know that I struggled with finding a doctor that didn't feel like they only cared because I paid them to care. Because that's kind of what it is. But not all of them can hide that fact. And having a good doctor is very important. I definitely got lucky with the doctor that I currently have. But it's also important to remember that you are in control. It is your choice, your decisions, not theirs. Especially when it comes to medication. If it's not something that you want to do, tell them no. And if they want to keep pushing it, find a different doctor. Medication isn't the only answer. And different doctors have different approach to medication. I'm currently on medication, something that I was on for most of my life up until about 25 is when I got off of medicine. And I was off of it until a little over a year ago. But I will tell you that it does help if you find the right ones, which some doctors treat you like a paycheck when they prescribe medicine, so you want to avoid that too. But good medicine can definitely help a lot. And it's also really good to have a good support system in your life, both with the doctor, with your family, with your friends, which will bring me to my next point, that part of having a good support system is not letting toxic people stay in your circle. Doesn't matter who they are. Nobody is entitled to be in your circle if they're going to take away from your life and treat you like you are less than who you are. Part of my story is that I have been estranged from my parents for the last almost 3 years. A choice that I made. It was a very hard choice, but it wasn't a choice that I made lightly. For a lot of my adult life, I felt really disrespected. I felt like there was a constant need to prove myself and a constant need to do things for them. And if you weren't constantly doing things for them, they would forget all the other things that you already did and they wouldn't count. And it was very frustrating, and it took a lot out of me. And it also took a lot out of my family, my wife and my son, to where we're always walking on eggshells and always feel the need to prove yourself. Like, it gets exhausting. And just because they're your parents doesn't mean that you need to have them in your life. And it also doesn't mean that you have to respect them without getting respect in return. Respect is and always will be a two-way street. Nobody commands respect. Respect is earned. And if you don't treat people with respect, they're not going to treat you with respect. It is okay to set healthy boundaries with people, no matter who they are. And it's okay to want those boundaries to be respected. Some people can't understand that. For me, I feel like my parents didn't accept that I was a grown adult now with my own family, and I didn't really need them anymore. And it felt like they wanted to have control over me, and I was not willing to give that to them anymore. And I think that's a lot of what drove the wedge through there. Because I would set the boundaries, and they didn't think that they had to respect them because I was their kid. But at the same time, I'm an adult now. Like, I got my own family. And I know a lot of people have already asked this question with my decision about, from a faith perspective. The Bible does say to honor your parents, but it also goes a lot deeper than just that. So I don't regret my decision. I don't feel like it was the wrong decision. I've actually been more validated in my decision as I walk through faith. So don't feel like there's any reason that if there's people that are beating you up every day on an emotional level, that you can't cast them out, because nobody's entitled to be there. Again, I'm not going to preach the Bible to you guys. If you want to learn the Bible, download an app. There's plenty of them. Go pick up a Bible. I got one with me in my work van, which is where we're filming this right now. Taking a 5-minute break to make a video and reach out to people and see what happens, see where we end up. I don't know how many there's going to be, but, we'll see where the world takes us with this. But, making a decision to remove them from my life was a very hard decision. But I didn't just make it one day like, nope, that's it, I'm done. There was a process that I went through to try to set the boundaries. I had my wife try to explain it to them, my brother, my sister, all at the same time. I've tried to explain it to them, and they just weren't getting it. And after about the 5th time of trying to have like a very deep sit down of, this is why I'm upset and this is what needs to happen, and just not getting any resolve from it. Not even worse is my mother doesn't know how to really hang up her phone. So like, you'd have a conversation and then she would turn around to the other people in the room and start telling a completely different story than you had just told about why you're upset. But when I finally did make the decision, I was definitely met with a sense of peace and calm. My whole family was. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life. But it was also very rewarding and empowering in a way. And I talk about the sense of peace and calm that I felt back then. And I can compare it to now, as I found my faith and I went to church and God saved me. I feel like it was a very similar level of peace and calm that was foreign to me. It's not something that I've experienced often. I've tried many different ways throughout my life to try to cope with my anxiety and depression, to try to find ways to escape it, to improve myself through it. And what I've found is a lot of times I would do really good in one area of my life, but the other area of my life would suffer. Like, I would be doing really good at work, and my home life would suffer because I would be good at work, and then the demons would come out at night when I'm home with my family. Or I would do good at home and I would struggle at work. It was very hard for me to focus on fixing the root issue and accepting these things. And I still haven't fully accepted, the trauma that I've grown up through, and the things that caused me anxiety, the things that caused me depression. They're still there. It's not like they're completely gone, but I could tell you that it's been a lot easier to cope with them. But for me, finding God, or God finding me, whichever way you want to look at it, it was a very life-changing experience to me. I was agnostic, so I did believe in a higher power, but I couldn't tell you whether it was a God, or an entity, a bird, nothing. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I did believe in a higher power. So going through that, I had some events happen where I was at a pretty low point in my life where I really hated who I was. And I was a broken person. And in that brokenness, I felt like I needed to find something to believe in that was bigger than myself. And at first, it was not religion. It wasn't God. It was, I'm going to find some spiritual podcasts to see if I can find something that will resonate with me to help give me something different to focus on, something bigger than who I was. And I did that for a couple of days, and I found nothing. I tried a bunch of different podcasts and whatnot, and nothing sunk in. Nothing felt like it did anything for me. And it was at that point that I decided to reach out to someone who I have known for like 10 years, who goes to church often. And I asked her, how her church was, if it was the same, because I had gone to church with her like 7 years ago on a one-off thing, and again, wasn't the right time. And for me, I grew up going to church. It was not something that I really understood or felt connected to, but it just wasn't for me back then. But when I went with my friends 7 years ago, it was a different style, a different format. It was more new age, it was more energetic, it was more relatable, and I liked that. So my wife and I decided we were going to go to church. We were both kind of feeling not the greatest. Again, I was at a low point in my life. I was not good to my family with my anxiety and depression. I was doing really good at work, but the demons were coming out at home, and I didn't realize it until it got pretty bad. So we decided that we were going to go to church. And I can't really explain any of this other than I was saved by God, because we went to church, and as soon as the service started, all the weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I felt so much calm and peace that it made me emotional. The weight of the world was gone, and the pain I was feeling was just gone. And I'm sitting there through the service trying not to break down in tears. And then I look over to my wife, and she's sniffling too, and I'm like, oh, I'm glad it's not just me. But it was a very powerful experience. And it's been 2 months, and that wasn't the only experience that I've had. And through learning more about my faith and who I am, I've learned a lot about my anxiety and my depression, about, where I need to focus more. Because it's really overwhelming when you try to take care of everything at once. But most things stem from a root cause. And you really got to find that cause. And for me, I'll be honest, I don't know where exactly I'm going to go with all these videos. But I know that for me, I'm not out of the woods yet. Even last Sunday, I got run over by the freight train of depression. I was not doing good. And I'm working through that as well. Trying to continue to build my faith as well as my wall up against anxiety and depression. And there's a lot of things that I keep learning. A lot of things that I experienced. And I want to share some of that. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, something, You know, maybe it'll give me some more stuff to talk about in the next one. But it's a big part of my story, and I don't know how this will go. So it's my first time. I'm Brandon. You know, thanks for sticking around.